Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to be showing you how to pot up and grow a rhododendron or an azalea in a container and discuss the benefits of growing them in pots. So let's get to it. Now when it comes to the time of year to do this, ideally you want to do it early spring before it flowers. However, if you've just got this plant, this one here was given to me by a friend, then it's going to be a lot happier in a larger pot with fresh compost than stuck in its original one like this. So the first thing you need to do is select your container. Now when doing this, all it needs to be is larger than the original pot your plant was grown in. Bear in mind, the bigger the pot you go for, the bigger the plant will grow and the longer it will be before you need to repot it again. I've gone here for a terracotta pot that's quite thick, as that's going to help retain the moisture and it means I have to water it less. You also want to make sure that there's holes in your pot. If there isn't, then you need to drill those in to allow for drainage. Then make sure you've got some ericaceous compost, as that's going to help the acidity of the soil, which is what these plants love. And I like to add a little bit of topsoil in there to help with that soil structure. First thing I like to do is just to get a piece of old newspaper and just place that in the bottom just to cover up those holes. Then as you water, it's not going to wash all of the compost through, it's going to be captured there, and then give it a few months and this newspaper will rot nicely and the roots will start to establish and the soil would have settled. So this just stops any of that soil washing through while watering, just while it's getting established. Then, because we've got quite large holes, you want larger stones or some old broken pots or tiles at the base to allow drainage and once again stopping that soil being washed through. So I'm going to put a few there and then dress it with a little bit of shingle there. Just so that can act as the drainage. So this stops the roots going deeper and starting to rot, as when the water gets down to this level it can easily drain out the base of the pot. Next we're going to get the ericaceous compost in there. So just put a little bit on the base, and then this is where I'm going to put the topsoil. Just to help with that structure there. As if you just put compost in, I feel that it just ends up going to nothing over time. So I feel the topsoil and ericaceous mix works really well. Now if you've got any feed, you're more than able to dress a little bit of feed at the base of this pot. However, with this I'm more than happy with this mix. So a good little tip, take the old pot off and use that as a bit of a marker, because you want to bring the soil level just below the rim so when you water it, it doesn't overflow and soil doesn't get washed out there. Yep, so I'm happy with that. Now a trick you can do if you have a pot that's a lot larger than your original pot is actually just dress the soil around the edge. I mean, this works with this one as well, to be honest. Dress it around the edge of the pot, and any excess soil that falls in the pot you can then put around the edge. Now what's going to happen is it's going to leave a mould of the original pot. So you can just press that down there a little bit. Just makes it a little bit easier to fill the sides up. And then you have that perfect hole which the rhododendron would fit in quite nicely, and then you can just dress the soil over there. So that can be quite a good trick to get that potted up a lot easier. However, for this, I'll show you the more traditional way. Before I'm going to pot this in, you can see that these roots have become a little bit tight round here. So what I'm going to do is just gently scratch the roots with a fork, or if the roots are more tender, you can do it with your hands, just to loosen those up, to kind of break it out of that pot bound cycle. As when they're grown in nurseries and things, sometimes you get the end of the stock where they're just about to pot it up, or you might get it reduced because it hasn't been potted up. So what we're doing is just breaking those roots, so when it starts to grow in here, the roots aren't wrapped around like this, they're opened up like that, ready to grow in the soil. So you don't want to dig in too deep with this, just a gentle scratch just to loosen up those roots. Depending on how pot bound your plant actually is, you may need to get your secateurs in there just to take any thicker roots out. Now I do usually find the base of these quite tough, and you can hear that's quite firm there, so you will get some of them broken and you will need to tear some away like that. But I don't want that back in the pot, to be honest, so I will get those out. There we are. Now you can see there it's quite matted. I don't really want that stuck at the base of the plant. I want them to start growing through, so the plant can develop a larger and a healthier root system there. You can just see all these roots are now more exposed, so they'll be able to grow through. Okay, so same again, a little bit of topsoil in there and a little bit of ericaceous. If you've just got ericaceous, there's no harm in just putting ericaceous in. Just at the base there, I want it to create a nice soil structure, so that's why I put the topsoil in. You're more than able to put a little bit of sand or horticultural grit just to help it down there as well, especially with the drainage. Right, so I'm happy with that height there. So it's just a case of positioning it in the centre and then backfilling with more compost. So we go for ericaceous compost, as ericaceous compost is tailored for acidic loving plants, and that will really help this rhododendron thrive in this pot, and it's the same with azaleas. So something to consider is just making sure your plant is straight and then gently firming down the edges as you're backfilling. It doesn't need to be super firm, as you still want water to be able to pass through, but just enough to help support that plant there. Now you may have noticed that the nurseries usually put some sort of chippings or mulch on the top of their plants. Now you'll see this at quite good nurseries, as this helps for soil retention, prevents weeds growing in there, and it can help to feed the plant as well. So what I am going to do is get a little bit of mulch myself and dress that on top, but I'll be doing that after I've watered. Hopefully now you'll be able to see a bit better with this camera angle how the level of the plant is about here, so there's a little bit of space here to allow for water, a little bit of mulch, and prevent that from overflowing. And I've gone up to and over the original roots, as you don't want any of those exposed on the surface. Last up is just to give it a little bit of water. Now I'm using a rose head on this. If you look, it's quite a light sprinkling rather than gushing water over there. I'm just sprinkling it in there, as you don't want to disturb the soil a lot. So it's a nice gentle watering rather than flooding it. Now you can give this a really good drink, especially as it's a very hot day today, and I know there's sufficient drainage within there so there's not going to be any chance of overwatering. Then I've got this mulch here, which I'll be dressing on the top just to keep that water in, and it will act as a feed every time I water it. This is always a good sign that the pot is draining sufficiently. There are various benefits to container growing. With something like a rhododendron, if you have always wanted to grow one, but you have a small garden or alkaline soil, by growing it in a pot, it enables you to control the size and change the soil type to suit the plant's needs. And that's it for this video. Hope you found it useful and entertaining. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share. Anyone who does so really does help the channel grow, and it's much appreciated. If you're interested in this sort of content, do check out my channel. There's lots of other gardening related videos on there. So I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.